Jai Gurudev Meditators, and I'm doing a summation of several knowledge meetings and answering questions that many of you who were unable to attend will hear in this brief video. This is strictly for Vedic meditators, and if you feel anything got missed, feel free to write in the comments. Always subscribe, because then you're going to get the updates sooner than later, and check out the prior videos. Many individuals, it has now been 6 weeks, whether either on the front lines or sheltering in place. All of these addressed issues regarding the mantra and thoughts coming up with the mantra. Those who are not using their bodies as much are surprised that when meditating, the mantra now seems to be more present, it seems to be louder than often before they would have the intent of the mantra, begin to meditate and find they would drift off quite naturally, and the meditation seemed very easy and effortless. Meditation is to always be effortless on our part. The only effort that's required is getting to the chair. So why the sudden change with the mantra now that there is sheltering in place? This is because the body is not as active as before, and the stress of a long-term shift in behavior, a long-term change to what's happening not only in one's individual environment, but also the state you're in, the country that you're in, and for the whole world. The pandemic is going to change how we live on this planet moving forward. That in itself is great. That is a movement before we can actually deal with the stress for our own sake. We need to understand will occur and is better for the planet. As individuals, we're always concerned with what we call in the Vedic worldview the small self. When will I get my next meal? When will I have the job? How will I pay my bills? Will I be loved? Am I unloved? All of these primal questions are what we concern ourselves with the small self, our immediate needs. When we have a pandemic, what we start to see is an outpouring of love and action, that humanity comes together. And in an enlightened state of consciousness, this is a normal activity, helping others, being able to be there if they need anything. However, in our current society, this is not how we view factors that are important to us. What becomes is the self-serving in the immediate needs. Ideally, after a pandemic, the changes that are put into place can be continued, and we can prevent many of the factors that have caused such a pandemic to occur, but also live in a more enlightened state of consciousness. How is this relating to me having thoughts and meditation? In this particular practice, if you remember, we talk about stress being released. And when stress comes up to the higher levels, we notice that it becomes in our mind thoughts that are released. Now, when we say lower levels, we're not meaning a lower states of consciousness. I'm talking about going inward. Unlike concentration techniques, we are not straining or doing a mental exercise to move the mind, right? We are simply using the mantras that were given in this meditation, to help us go inward, go beyond thought, right? And we actually go beyond the mantra. Sleep, we're sitting upright, but we're getting into a place of deep rest. This space is where we are then able to release some of the stresses within our physiology and our consciousness that are ready to come up and out. When they come up and they get closer to the surface, what happens is the mind that was then drifting away off of the mantra going off is then snapping back. And as it comes back, it is then being reminded it's off the mantra because we're having a thought. These thoughts are part of this practice, but the stress of having thoughts comes from an idea that thoughts are not supposed to be part of this practice. Therefore, if we are under more stress, what's going to happen in meditation? more thoughts are going to come up. If we feel agitated by those thoughts, it's simply because it has an emotional root that we have not actually managed to filter out that stress completely. This is absolutely normal. If we find ourselves reacting to politicians or leaders, this is a normal human reaction to have, and don't attempt to change your reactions in any form. Just notice in meditation, if you feel emotions bubbling up, they're simply moving up and out. The idea being that in the waking state, we're not going to be outlandish, act out, behave in an irrational manner, because we would have got the stress attended to in meditation. Some have said that their mantras were very easy and now they don't seem to be easy. Well, that's because the body was ready before we had the shelter in place, and the body was ready to go in and get deep rest because you've been busy moving around. Ultimately, you're now being faced with deeper stressors, the deeper stresses that are relating to the small self. If my physiology is not being exhausted, what's coming up are severe fight or flight primal responses that we cannot simply exercise out. We are now facing some of our deeper stress. This is good. We are actually getting to another level, a deeper level of purifying consciousness when we meditate in a period of time. We're actually physically not that active. Why? We're simply dealing with the mind. If we continue to do a regular meditation practice, there will be times where it doesn't feel restful. Do remember, the science has proved otherwise. And one great part of this pandemic that's happening in the United States and around the world are individuals are listening to the scientists again. So please, listen to the science with the meditation, that it works even if you think it doesn't. Surrender to your sound, allow your mind to drift off, and when you have the realization you're off the mantra, very easily and effortlessly come back to the mantra. Remember, this is a practice designed for what we call householders, and that's a very Victorian term to say people who are not dedicating their life to a monastic practice. They don't have to deal with the stress of neighbors' children being at home. They don't have to deal with the stress of when will I pay my bills, or the stress of dealing with confined space environments when you're not used to being around that many people. The fear of you losing loved ones to a pandemic. It's not as heightened as when you are a householder in the world dealing with the day-to-day business. Meditate regularly. 15 minutes is the minimum, 20 minutes the maximum, unless there's a prescription otherwise from the teacher. This is not a concentration technique. I'm going to say that again. This is not a concentration technique. Yes, we have to introduce the mantra, but we're not attempting to keep the mind on one particular track, which happens in guided meditations or breathing instructions. This is a practice where the sound is charming the mind to go inward, so the body gets the rest, that we can throw off some of the stressors. Long term, what will happen is any of those fight or flight responses that have been held within our physiology now have a space for them to come up and out. And when that happens, we now have more adaptation energy to react to what's happening in the moment right now, rather than it triggering something from before, and the ability to be more creative and cognize. Like I'm talking about having moments of ding, the light bulb goes on. How to be more creative. Creativity, as they say, necessity is the mother of all invention. That's creativity. Look what's happening now in the world. People are making masks. People are finding ways to adapt to the restrictions. This is a great sign that we are in cultures, we are in a society that is being forced to be creative, and we can. Let's think on the deeper level in regards to consciousness and what's happening worldwide in regards to this pandemic. I'm going to talk about this because many people have contacted me in regards to, I can't wait till everything gets back to normal. The reality is, normal was not working for the planet. Normal was killing species. Normal was having a planet that was starting to revolt back to us. And a pandemic of this such is really a big red flag, a warning that we need to change our behavior globally.